On the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Keep your distance and wear a mask. It's the advice that's been given to millions of people around the world. And following that recommendation has become, for many, the norm. But others refuse to comply.
When you wear a mask, which you can certainly do, you are further pushing the agenda that is condemning all of us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, people all around the world believe that somehow being made to wear face masks is an act of fascist brutality. Well, we at the CFZ always do what the government tell us to do, and we always have, don't we, chaps? And here you can see Wally and his friend from Sumatra, who are wearing the masks and practicing social distancing in order to be patriotic young fellows. I think everybody should give them a big clap and a cheer of applause. Yes!
Yay!
And we would like to say that Archie would be wearing a mask as well if it wasn't for the fact that we found it hard enough to get one onto Wally's muzzle. On Archie's muzzle, I'm afraid it would just not be a feasible option. I think, Mr. Johnson, you need to do something like this so that patriotic young dogs like Archie can show that Britain does rule the waves. Huzzah! On the 1st of September, I said goodbye to my wife for the last time. God bless you, my darling. And God bless all of you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. And when I came home that night after her funeral, I realised that I am now in a position that I never thought I would have to be in again. At the age of 61, I'm having to reinvent myself because there's an awful lot of things that I want to achieve, and I'm going to have to achieve them without having Corinna by my side. So, I have two options. I can either sit back and wallow in my own misery and wait for life to come and make things better, or I can pick myself up, dust myself down, and get on with it. And guess, which one am I going to be doing? Charlotte, which one am I going to be doing?
I don't know. Ask Archie. He seems awfully talkative.
Why don't you go and see what Uncle Carl's been doing in God's own country? You know, the Midlands.
Regular readers of Animals and Men, our journal, will know that last autumn Carl Marshall came up with some fascinating evidence from the Forest of Dean, which appears to show that there are lynx living there. He wrote a cogent and well laid out paper for the journal describing his researches, and this winter he's gone back to see what else he can find. Well, before we start, Carl, I'm very glad to see that you and your compadre were practicing social distancing even out in the car park. Tell me, who is this guy that you had with you?
That's Andrew Geordie Jackson. He's an old colleague of mine from the butterfly farm in Stratford, and I've been around the world with him quite a few times to different places like Belize and Borneo and Mexico, places like that.
And he's a crypto enthusiast as
No,
well.
he's an entomologist.
Well, that's cool. So am I. But the two things aren't mutually exclusive.
Not if they're done right, no.
Now, tell me, what were you hoping to do?
We were just hoping really to find some more tracks. That would have been nice, because the track we found just before the COVID outbreak was very, very convincing. Carl Schuker and Darren Naish had both seen it, and they both vouched for it, saying that it looks very genuine. Oh dear. It's roe deer. So we basically went back to the same area with the idea of trying to find some more. We didn't find any more tracks. All the tracks we found on the second time were deer and boar and things like that. So we looked for anything else we could find, and luckily enough we found some hair samples.
Where did you find the hair?
The hair was found on the bottom of a tree, at the base of a tree, about a foot from the ground, so about the right kind of height you would expect to come from an animal the size of a lynx. It's the same colour as a lynx hair, but obviously until we get it analysed we don't know for sure. Now that looks to me like there's a follicle on the end. That's a hair of roughly the right colour anyway. I'll take that one as well. Can you see any more? No.
How did you decide where to go to look for the hares?
We basically went to roughly the same location that we went last November, when I found the tracks the first time. So the area we went this time was pretty close by, but obviously I'm not going to reveal the exact location.
Of course not, because you don't want everybody in their arms all going rushing around there scaring creatures away.
Yeah.
And here Geordie is triangulating the exact position where the hair samples were found using a handheld GPS system, which we bought specifically for this investigation. This is now, I believe, going to be the focus of a major CFZ project.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How many people so far are involved?
Oh, it's got to be about 8 or 9.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's more than I thought. Well done. So, what's the next stage?
The next stage is to go again and try and get more biological samples. Obviously, we'll send photographs of the samples to Lars, photographs of the hairs to Lars, so we can identify them. And if anything turns out to come from a cat, then that's positive data, and then we need to compile as much positive data as we can to try and pinpoint the location where the animal might be. The idea is to get in front of it. Usually, anyone looking for these sorts of animals are always following tracks, so essentially you're always behind the animal, whereas if you use ecological data, hopefully you can go to where you expect it to be.
One of the things that I'm finding particularly exciting about this project is the way it is truly multidisciplinary, and you have people like Lizzie, who works in market research, and Richard Muirhead, who's a... No, she doesn't. And you have people like Lizzie, who not only works in marketing, but understands databases and understands the electronic storage and retrieval of data. And people like Richard Muirhead, who's a qualified librarian, and putting their skills together. I think we've got the chance of actually being able to, for the first time, provide a real online resource for people who are studying these things. Because what I want to do, speaking as the director of the CFZ, the whole and most important thing of all is transparency. You have too many people around the world who claim to be cryptozoologists who go rushing through forests wearing their camouflage gear and shouting, "There's a Sasquatch in that there forest!" and producing a couple of blurry photographs of what could be anything from half a mile away and calling that cryptozoological data. And with that sort of nonsense being imbued in the public eye as being what cryptozoology is all about, no wonder people don't take this discipline seriously. And it's the one thing that I hope to finally achieve before I retire or drop down dead, is that CFZ makes cryptozoology be taken seriously by the wider community.
You are not having those Make Cryptozoology Great Again hats.
But now we've got the hair samples, Carl's brought them back. Here we are in my sitting room at CFZ HQ here in North Devon, and we are trying one of our expensive and customised pieces of equipment. Because, as you know, any scientific organisation needs to spend as much money as they can on their equipment. And we are no exception. This microscope, which is still being made today, was bought by Carl for the princely sum of £10 at a car boot sale. And the problem is we're having difficulty getting it to communicate with our computer. Well, I'm not bad with computers, but Carl's terrible, and this problem was far beyond both of us. So we did what we always do in cases like this. We telephoned the cool, calm, reasoning head of CFZ Tech support, Louis.
Don't call me computer boy.
And Louis was as professional and analytical as we have come to expect from CFZ Tech support, and he told us exactly what to do. He told us that we were a pair of blithering idiots, and that the only thing we could do is to pack the microscope up in a box packed with a load of that stuff that looks like polystyrene rabbit droppings, and send it off to him, and he would fit in a new light to make the microscope powerful enough, hopefully, to be able to take analytical photographs of the hair samples, which Carl and Geordie are bringing back from the Forest of Dean.
Why do you have to look at the hair under a microscope?
Okay, well, basically each species is different. If you look at the hair under a dog, say, under the microscope, the scalation, the patterning on the outside of the hair will be different as it is to a cat. And also the medulla, which is the gap that runs up the middle of the hair, it has patterning to it, different shapes, and that's also can be used to tell what species we're looking at.
So really, there's nothing better than good old-fashioned field work.
Yeah, that's the best kind of data. I mean, eyewitness reports testimony is useful to a certain extent, but we really need biological data.
And that's really how the CFZ approach is going from now on. It's a mixture of old-fashioned field work and the best technology that either we can buy or that our boffins like Louis can actually build for us. Young Willis Manson was the saddest boy in his village because he wanted to be a famous stand-up comedian, and everybody told him that he wasn't funny. Even his mother didn't laugh at his jokes. And he got sadder and sadder and sadder until one day everything changed because he was out for a walk when he suddenly got farted upon by a radioactive rhinoceros. And then everything changed. And he became Wally the comedy rhinoceros. Hooray! This lockdown has made everything more than slightly different, but in many ways it hasn't affected me at all. I spend most of my time in my strange old house, with my animals and my books, occasionally venturing out into the garden, which in the last few years I've let grow wild. However, I've people all over the world who act as my eyes and my ears, and quite regularly, pretty well every day in fact, they send me items of interest. In the middle of October, Gwyn Palmer, and let me just digress here for a moment, many congratulations to Gwyn and her boyfriend Muro on the birth of their baby boy Mohammed. Mohammed, welcome to the world. I'm very proud to have been elected into the position of your great uncle, and look, I have the long greying beard which every great uncle should have, and I very much look forward to making your acquaintance. Back to the story. In the middle of October, Gwyn Palmer sent me news that a bona fide cryptid had been found in the grounds of the Royal Devon and Exeter Hospital in Wanford, Exeter. It was a massively rare moth called the Clifden Nonpareil, or the blue underwing. Now, this is particularly peculiar because guess who works at the RD&E? None other than our old friend and colleague Richard Freeman, who's well known to viewers of this show not only as a crypto pundit in his own right, but as Barry Tadcaster, who broadcasts surreal nonsense with an orang pendek all the way from Nuneaton in the South Midlands. But there's more. This incredibly rare moth can reach a wingspan of over 10 centimetres. And guess who in the CFZ is terrified of moths? Yes, you've guessed it, Richard Freeman. But why are we making so much of a fuss about this huge moth? It's undeniably beautiful, but why is it so important? The distribution area covers almost the entirety of Central and Northern Europe, and it was first described by none other than Linnaeus in his 1758 10th edition of his Systema Naturae. Its English name of Clifden Nonpareil is derived from the location of the first British records, which were at the Clifden estate in Berkshire back in the 18th century. Nonpareil, by the way, means without equal in French. It seems to have been a very rare creature in Britain as far back as the 19th century. P.V.M. Allen, who was the author of 4 wonderful books of moth-hunting memoirs, one of which is called Moths and Memories, and another is called A Moth Hunter's Gossip, is someone of whom I have an immense admiration, even though he's been dead for the best part of 50 years, dying at the age of 89 in 1973. All the way through his moth-hunting memoirs, he refers to Fraxina with almost religious awe, and in various other writings from the end of the 19th and first half of the 20th centuries, this moth has been referred to as pretty much the holy grail of British Lepidoptera. I've always wanted to see one, but never have, and it came as quite a surprise when researching this short piece to find out that until the 1960s it was still known as a rare breeding species in Great Britain. However, post-war changes to forestry, when the larval food plants of aspen and poplar were cleared to make way for conifers, finally wiped the species out. Ever since, it's been only a rare migrant from Europe, with just single sightings recorded some years. It seems that the larvae, however, were found in Sussex round about 2010, although I've not been able to verify the original citation myself. However, in 2019, Richard Fox, who is the Associate Director of Recording and Research at Butterfly Conservation, says, "It is great to know that it's resident again in the UK after an absence of 40 years or so. However, whether he's referring to the large amount of vagrants that were recorded last year, or whether he knows something that we don't, which I suspect, I don't know. But whether or not it's breeding in the UK, it's wonderful to know this glorious and undeniably impressive creature managed to turn up in the gardens of Exeter's General Hospital to do its best at scaring the pants off Richard Freeman."
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
Well, that was this month's episode of On the Track, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. And we'll see you next month. Goodbye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of another episode and another year. I'm not going to pretend that it's been an enjoyable year, because it's been an absolutely horrible one. But we carry on. I'm dusting myself down, picking myself up, and just getting on with the business of running the Centre for Fortean Zoology. And we've got a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline for you. And I sincerely hope that with 2021 will come the return of regular on the tracks, same as they were a year or so ago before all the horrors started. So here's hoping, and I'll see you next time. Be seeing you. Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's me again. Over the last few months you've probably noticed that On the Track has changed. Well, there's a very good reason for that. The thing is that between 2000 and 2017, that's 17 years for those of you who can't count, I was the main promoter of an annual event called The Weird Weekend. And it was a conference aimed at, about and for people from the Centre for Fortean Zoology. And although it wasn't all about cryptozoology, it was all full of events and lectures and film shows and exhibitions on subjects which I thought that people from the Centre for Fortean Zoology would be interested in. And it was all wrapped up in a nice overcoat of surreal fun. And you know what? I miss it terribly, which is why about 6 months ago I decided that I was going to rebrand On the Track. I thought we'd do a monthly episode of about half an hour, and then in between each episode we do what I call On the Track Extra, which resurrects somewhat of the feel of the old Weird Weekend. And have a look at these 2 examples, which I chose almost at random because I thought that you might enjoy them.